I'm here at Superbooth. This is an incredible place outside with Toms Lazdovskis.
And I'm here with Anthony Marinelli.
And we're so happy to be here. We just ran into each other and we did some fun stuff back at NAMM of 2024. It was this year, right?
This January.
We're already,
or was it February?
But it was this year.
It was this year, definitely.
And now we're just running into each other at Superbooth, and this is such an incredible setting. And we just were in the middle of a conversation about digital versus analog. And actually digital not always versus analog, you know, it's digital
and analog.
And analog.
Yeah.
I
really like the video that you did about digital is more analog than analog, and that is actually what started this conversation, right?
Yes, it was based on a paper by Mark Barton that he wrote with that title, that digital is more analog than analog, and it created a discussion. And Toms, he watched the video and had his own thoughts on it, as we all do, right? Because it strikes people in usually a very strong way, one way or the other. And he's an instrument designer, along with his other team at Gamechanger Audio. So he knows a lot about it, and he knows a lot about why they should live together and what he likes about either one of them. And we talked about the interfaces. So I just want to kind of dive back into that conversation, because we had to roll out the cameras for this, because I think it's really valuable information. It is to me, you know, and I love hearing it from your point of view.
And so, first of all, I just wanted to say that I really love that video. I watched it like 2 or 3 times, and I sent to a bunch of my friends, and I agreed with both of you and disagreed with both of you at the same time. But that's a good thing, because there are a lot of valuable ideas to take away from that video. And I liked how you were focusing on the interface parts of the instrument, and your opponent was focusing on the way how sound is produced and played back. Yeah. And you both had these very, very good arguments. And I think if you pick the best parts from both of those worlds and put them together, you have, in theory, the best instrument that one could wish for.
He's not such an opponent per se, but maybe for the purposes of the video and the discussion.
Yeah. You're a discussion opponent, yeah.
So what did you disagree with and agree with? Let's start there.
Well,
do you remember?
The basic idea that digital is more analog than analog is a wonderful idea, which kind of plays with the meaning of the words.
Yeah.
Right. So if we're looking at analog as an analog technology in sound synthesis and in musical instrument devices, then I really agree with him, because the digital allows you to do things much more precisely. And so that is more analog to the sounds in real world. Like they're more analogous. Is that word?
Yeah,
English?
that's what it means. So more similar to the ear.
Yeah.
The way the ear hears it in the real world.
Exactly. But that's a play on words, right?
So you think the digital captures sound more similarly to the way our ears hear it in the real world? Would that be a fair way to characterize what you're thinking?
Yes. However, you have to distinguish how you are measuring it. If you're measuring it with your ears, I don't think there even should be a discussion if it's analog or digital. I mean, in this day of age where analog technology has come a long way, right? Everything's ultra precise. It shouldn't really matter, right? And that is the point you were making. You were focusing on an interface. Just because it's digital from some perspective, it doesn't necessarily have to have a screen and deep diving menus and multifunction knobs, or doesn't have to have a mouse or a trackpad. It can still have these wonderful big knobs that do
even though it's digital,
even though it's digital. So the user interface and the technology of producing or affecting the sound are two completely separate things.
Yeah, but they aren't. They absolutely are, but in like practical application. And you mentioned to me, you have people that ask you, is this thing digital or analog? And my conjecture is that they want to know, is it going to have knobs that make sense to them? Or is it going to be screens? And I'm going to be mousing around?
So the example that I mentioned you before was with our product called the Light Pedal, which is our take on a classic spring tank. And so it has an actual analog spring tank inside the pedal that takes care of all the sounds that you're hearing. But there is a tiny bit of digital in that pedal.
The spring tank's clearly analog.
Yeah.
Clearly.
And so when we launched this product, there were people who were, their first question about this product was, is it digital or analog? And I'm happy to answer that question. I have no problem answering. But I was just wondering, why is that your first question? Like, don't you have other questions? Don't you have questions about what was the inspiration behind the product? Or what are the wildest uses of this product? Or what can I achieve with this knob? You know, how far does it get? How crazy can I get? Or how subtle can I get?
Yeah.
And the question was it analog or digital? And this is just my my understanding and my personal opinion. I think that those people who were asking this question were focusing on the sound of it. Right?
Well, they want to know. I mean, I might ask that question because I want to know if I can operate it easily. If I'm going to be messed up, there's going to be, I go in the back and there's computer jacks and all kinds of things, and I'm going to have to read a manual and then see menus.
Yeah.
That's why.
But I think that they were asking just because it's in our culture to ask this question.
It is.
Without really thinking about the importance of this aspect. Is it digital or analog, right?
Yeah.
Take the pedal, plug it in, start turning the knobs, and play as best as you can. And if you still, if after this process you still have the question of digital or analog, then okay, let's go into that deep conversation. But then let's get to the bottom of it. You know, why some parts of it are digital and why some parts are.
Well, let's get to the bottom of it.
Okay.
Why did you take a perfectly amazing sounding spring? Because I love this spring.
Yeah.
I use it. It's the Light Pedal, and it's made by Gamechanger Audio, right? And I bought it. I just liked it before we ever met or anything. Why did you put a digital circuit in there?
Well, the primary reason is that you want to tailor the sound before it goes into the spring tank, because the spring of its own has specific resonant frequencies that you want to deal with. You either want to push them to accentuate them, or you want to take them back to make the sound flatter, right? And you also want to mess with the EQ of the sound so that it works better with the spring tank.
Yeah.
And so those parts are way cheaper, way more precisely doable in digital realm.
So you gave the user more precision at a lower cost.
Yeah.
Essentially.
Yeah.
And then now all of a sudden you're branded that the product's digital.
Well, it's a hybrid.
Hybrid.
Let's call it like that. But I mean, if I'm speaking with somebody and they just want to know generally if it's analog or digital, I will probably go with analog and then explain the rest of it, because the core of it, how it creates those spring reverb sounds, is purely analog. And some people think, okay, it has some light sensors, so it's digital. No, it's light, and light sensors are completely analog. So even the crazy part of it, the weird sounding part of it, is purely analog, right?
And we're in the digital age, but it's still kind of a turnoff to many digital.
Yeah.
Like they don't want it to be, and I realized that I'm outputting everything digitally, like pretty much everything in my studio, as analog as it is at the beginning. Sooner or later, it's going to hit something digital, right? If anybody's going to ever hear it.
Right. Like I would say that the vast majority of music that we hear goes through a computer at some point, right?
Yeah.
And I think it's a good thing. It allows us to put out more music than people were able back in the day, right? You know, the tape recorders are much more expensive than a simple laptop and a sound card, right?
I can keep track of it. I can put it in folders and all that sort of thing.
But I really get the idea about, you know, the typical digital interface, right? I don't know what people. I know what people imagine in their heads when they say digital type interface, right? So usually we'll have a screen. Usually we'll have like deep diving menus and maybe knobs that do multiple things at the same time. So it's kind of hard to get a grasp of them. And truth be told, some Gamechanger audio products have that as well. And then it's always like a balancing in which direction do you want to go? Do you want to make this like extremely powerful device that can do everything? Then yeah, I mean, you can go for a huge Eurorack or Moog wall that tries to do everything, or you can have this like small device with a screen that actually does like 3 times more. And some people actually like that kind of interface.
Yeah, but usually not a musician. I mean, I'm telling you, well, that was one of the things with Mark when we were doing the digital versus analog discussion. It was like, well, you can have an endless amount of filters and an endless amount of oscillators. And I think I said something like, well, why is that a good thing? Because for me, the more I limit my possibilities, usually the more creative I'm able to be.
Yeah.
You know, if I'm lugging around all kinds of stuff, I don't have as much freedom of movement. And so it's the same thing in my brain.
Exactly.
With music, you know?
Yeah.
If you write for one violin, you really can write just music. You're just focusing on the notes. The more stuff you bring into the picture, it just starts getting more and more complicated.
If you have one guitar, it sounds the way it sounds, and you're in charge of, you know, extracting more out of it than any other bloke will.
Now you put a pedal board and you start adding all this complicated stuff to it. It's not necessarily better. And that's, I think, the pitfall of the digital thing is like the designers are like, well, now I can put this in. Now I can put this in. And then the interface is lagging way behind. Because the digital starts to get carried away and there's only so much room for knobs, right? Because we were talking about big knobs and little knobs, right?
Yeah, right.
So why is it good to have a lot of little knobs that do all kinds of different possibilities versus a couple of really good big knobs?
Right.
What do you think about knobs? Big knobs, little knobs?
Well, my personal taste is big knobs, and if we go even deeper into it, I like when it's all big knobs, but they're the same size.
All the same size. Yeah. Why do you like them all the same size?
Because I like when the instrument designer hasn't determined for me what I will be touching the most.
I know what you're saying.
My personal favorite gear company for the last couple of years has been Doper, and I really love their original aesthetic, where every knob looks the same, is the same size, and so for me, I can turn the filter cutoff knob, or I can mess with the CV knob for that filter knob, and it feels exactly the same. And so some modules will have a huge filter cutoff knob, but this the CV knob will be this tiny black thing, and in most cases I will be turning that small CV knob the most. I will tune my filter where I want it to be, like tuning an oscillator.
Right.
You tune it and you don't touch it.
But then they decided which knob is going to be a good one, and then you can't use it for what you want to use it for.
But some people who play the filter just, you know, without CV going into it, who play the filter like they would play a guitar, for them the big knob probably makes more sense, and the CV knob is just there like an addition, like a bonus, right? And so what I like is same size knobs.
The Moog synthesizer didn't even have knobs on everything, and they just have attenuators.
Yeah.
And then you can decide even what knob you want.
Yeah.
You know, so...
And in which part of the case?
Yeah. Well, what do you want to route through? I mean, I could actually move the knob somewhere else if I want to move the knob, because everything's movable.
Exactly.
But, and all the attenuator knobs are the same. So you basically... Because what it is like instrument making. The interface is the instrument.
Exactly. That's the instrument that the musician will play, not the insides of it, right?
Yeah. You can't even get to it. So the menu diving, sometimes, I can't tell you how many musicians I know that just, when there's like what do they call it, like a hidden layer or something, you know, where it's like you have to push a button to get to the second level. Yeah. What's the term for that?
Second layer functions, I would guess. Yeah. Some of the Gamechanger audio products have that. And it usually is the case of wanting more and giving people more options. And then the balance that you have to find is so that the second layer function doesn't disrupt the first layer. And that is always a hard task.
It's huge. But a lot of times I was saying like about the musicians are just like, well, the first layer stuff's good on this.
Yeah.
Because if it gets too difficult to dive in there, and then you can't get back to the first layer so easily, and then you don't remember, because it's the same knob, and like wherever I left that knob, it doesn't remember what it was because now it's a different thing. Because it's like what you're saying about you don't want to have like knobs prioritized by the instrument maker. You're the musician, and you get used to the feel of it too, and how far the throw is.
Exactly. The feel. You have to develop muscle memory for the button. And so, for example, in the motor synth, we have like a mix of the word is
Potentiometers?
potentiometers. Thank you.
Yeah,
So we have a
crazy
mix of potentiometers and encoders. And so some parts of the synthesizer really to be able to dial in the thing of the user interface that you want to work with.
Yeah.
Some of those things require an encoder. But some things have a potentiometer, a knob. I will use the word knob.
Yeah.
It's way easier for me.
A knob.
So it's the way how you interact with each of them is very different. With the encoder, you're looking at the screen. With the knob, you're looking at the audience in front of you and turning the knob.
When you like the feel of a knob and when you know what it does, you use it.
Exactly.
And that's as simple as that. And that's kind of where I come from. Most of the stuff I do with the synth channel and everything comes from that kind of thinking, because I'm not really a computer. It doesn't, for music creation, it is very necessary, but I respect it as an instrument, and the people that are really good on it, I want to work with them, and they're fast on it.
Yeah.
For those very reasons, because they know what the knobs do, and they know what the feel is on them. Those are the two things: what it does and how it feels. And that's how I am with instruments. Whether it's playing a keyboard or you're playing a violin, or you're programming a synthesizer and you have your knobs. So I value the interface so much that at that point I don't care. But when the day comes that digital thinks about the interface as much as they think about all the possibilities, I think we're going to be at the next level of digital.
Right.
I think that's what's holding it up a little bit. Right. And we're just getting these conversations going. Hopefully people can hear it and throw their comments into the mix, and say what you really want. Because the instrument manufacturers, they are following their own minds, but usually there's someone with money behind them that's saying, we need to keep selling stuff.
Yeah.
And I think they need each other. The people that play the instruments need to push the instrument makers too, to not just pursue every possibility. Let them get in there and mess with it and see what's resonating, like these great ideas from engineering point of view. I think I heard Elon Musk say that the problem with engineers is they take it to market too soon, their products. And we're finishing and doing artwork and all this stuff.
I know these situations. I know these situations.
Because we want to make things that people can live with and love and feel.
We talked about earlier about, the benefit of having all the possible filters available at your disposal. I think you have to distinguish between all available filters for the musician or for the engineer. And so there's a big difference. So for example, from our product development experience, so let's say we are developing a product which has a filter in it, right? And so we already have a working prototype. A sound device already inside the closure, and I, as a test user, I'm not an engineer, right? So my part is pitching in ideas for the user interface and the sounds that it should make, and then testing the gear. And so when I'm testing a piece of gear, I'm kind of starting to feel, okay, this filter needs to be a little bit different, right? The slope on it needs to be steeper, for example, right? If I went to an engineer, if it was an analog filter, I went to an engineer like 2 months before the product launch and said, listen, we have to change the filter, he would probably swear at me, right? Because we already assembled this analog filter, it's in there, so we have to rip it apart and design a new analog filter to put in there. With digital, he just opens the code, and if he's good at it, he will just change a few numbers, few pieces of code, and after 10 minutes I can start testing the product with a completely different filter, and then we can quickly A/B and figure out which filter is the right one for this device.
Right.
And if we were doing all of this in analog, first of all, the components would be much more expensive than compared to digital, and the time that we would need to invest in doing the simple A/B comparison would be just a ballpark guess, like 5 times longer, probably even more, right? And so it all adds up to the cost, and where does that cost end up in the retail price of the product? And so people do
yeah.
want affordable.
They
gear,
do.
right?
They do. But that brings up an interesting thing. Like you could actually use digital for your research. And then once you get it figured out, then you can make it all analog.
That is an option, but
Then it's more money.
it's more money. But also, if you already have that digital filter that sounds good for your product, if it's already there, why would you change it? It's
No,
already,
you would if you like that one.
Yeah.
But that's always, the thing that we're never going to answer is which one sounds better.
Well, in our product Motor Synth, we have it consists of 3 voices. 2 of them are analog voices that take the sound from the motors and then pass it through all analog signal path through an analog envelope, through an analog VCA, through an analog filter. And then there's the digital voice, which consists of digital oscillators, digital VCA,
Yep.
And a digital filter. And our engineer Carlos did his best to make the digital filter respond and sound the same as the analog filters, and I can't tell the difference.
You can't tell.
I can't. I mean, I'm not the biggest expert in this show, right? But I would bet my money on that nobody would be able to tell the difference.
So that's your position, is that you can design digital to sound as good as anything analog? Could you actually say that?
and better. But again, I'm not making any comments about user interface, because
No.
you can have a digital filter that you have to program through a screen and one encoder. That would be a pretty tedious task and kind of not that inspiring.
So if I have the best analog something, VCA, whatever it is, somebody can come along digital and make it be better.
Yeah.
They'll match it and then make it better.
But then, it's a question of what is better.
No, I know we don't have to
Right.
get into that part,
Right,
but like
yeah.
if we could decide, like we know what the better is that everybody likes
Yeah.
about the VCA and go, okay, we copied it. You can't tell the difference. Let's go with there because
Yeah.
we're human. So
Yeah.
we're not looking at it on a screen. We can't tell the difference. And now we want to make it just be able to just be that plus a little brighter.
Yeah, exactly.
Then we can
you
do
can
it.
that. You can do
'Cause
that.
I can quantify that.
Yeah. Or make the resonance respond a little bit differently, right? And so
Yeah.
whatever I'm saying, you have to take with a grain of salt. I'm not an engineer. I work in sales, marketing, and as I said, I pitch in ideas for user interfaces, and I test the gear before it goes live. So I'm not the biggest expert, but the point that I want to make is that it's useless to talk about what sounds better or not. For example, the world famous WASP filter. I mean, you can make an argument that it's a really bad filter, and you can make an argument that's the best filter out there. I mean, it's one of my favorites. I have of course, the Doppler version of the WASP filter. I mean, the resonance on it is crazy, right? And so, even in analog, what is it good? I mean, in many cases, you could argue that it's not good at all. Like, for example, the Moog mixer, which is not a very good mixer. If you want like a very utilitarian mixer that does exactly what you it saturates.
It colors so much.
So it's a bad mixer. Or the Neve preamp, the original. What was the number or whatever?
Yeah, the 1073.
I've never used it and probably never will, because it's out of my scope of things that I can get. So, but what I like about Neve is that what he said, that preamp is like their biggest, like what was the words that he was using? I'm not quoting him, but that preamp that they created was their biggest enemy, because whatever they created afterwards, was better, had higher definition, but it wasn't that flavor of bad.
Classic stuff.
Exactly, and so
That is.
really, what's the point of talking about is it better or worse? Does it sound the way you want it to sound? Does it inspire you? Is it nice to touch? Right? Does the way how you touch the instrument correspond to what it outputs?
Exactly. Do I know what the knob's gonna do? And then does it feel good getting there?
Yeah.
If it does those two things,
Exactly.
then I can create music on it, and then I can decide, do I want to turn this one or the digital one or somebody else's analog one or somebody else's digital one? Because that's what we're really trying to get to, is the instrument that we want to love and wake up in the morning and play and create something on, right?
Exactly.
And that's it.
you said that, you know, musicians, you as a musician like limitations, right?
I have to have them.
I totally agree with that.
Deadline is the biggest limitation.
Yeah, it's a great limitation,
Okay, so
right?
you follow it.
Yeah, so it's a good thing that the synthesizer comes with that one filter. But it's also good that before it reached the customer, we were able to quickly go through these 10 iterations of that digital filter and decide which limitation is going to be the most
what they're going to be stuck with.
Yeah, exactly. And that it's actually affordable. I mean, synths are so much more affordable these days than they used to. You have to rent a studio to get an opportunity to play a polyphonic synthesizer.
Yeah.
These days, you just, you know, open Tom and you got a bonus at your work. Open Tom or Sweetwater, just buy your affordable polyphonic synthesizer.
Yeah.
And I think that's a good thing. I think that's a really good thing.
That it can be in the hands of people. Well, then the manufacturers will get more ideas from their customers too, and it's going to. We're at just this renaissance right now, and it's testimonial that we have events like this here at Superbooth. It's great seeing you here. Really, I love your ideas, and I love the Gamechanger products. You know, I buy them. You know, this is not sponsored or anything. I just like these guys and talk to them. They have great ideas and from Latvia, and they travel around and they're listening, and we're learning as we go here. So look forward to see you next time. Just running into you somewhere.
And thank you for covering subjects on your channel that are controversial. We need more of that.
Good.
Definitely.
Good. Well, it's gonna get better. Ben.
Looking forward to it.
All right. See ya. Have a good show.